than any other public institution in the world. NIH decades-long investment have helped the United States lead the world in addressing critical health challenges, helping us better understand heart disease, preventing and curing certain cancers. Just an example. It has also led to significant accomplishments like mapping the human genome, which is the foundation of many medical breakthroughs. As a medical researcher who has engaged in NIH-sponsored research for decades, Dr. Bhattacharya understands the power of these investments. Sir, if your name comes out a little bit different every time I say it, I apologize in advance. Importantly, NIH grants have increased biomedical research in states otherwise sufficient to invest. My state, Louisiana, has received roughly $500 million through NIH institutional development, or the idea of allowing institutions to bring life-saving cures and treatment to people in my state around the world. However, NIH claims that it has prioritized funding for risk-averse incremental. There's concern the current system incentivizes established scientists who study already proven rather than younger scientists who have unproven ideas potential major medical breakthroughs. While this practice may ensure the short-term success of federal grants, it limits groundbreaking discovery. I've discussed this previously and look forward to hearing more today. NIH is facing other serious during the COVID pandemic. There was a general loss of trust in public health scientific institutions. To restore that, officials need to be more transparent and provide reassurance that they are publishing health guidance that is best for Americans and not biased in any way. You have indicated you would like to promote free and open debate, including among scientists who disagree with research. NIH is flexible. If confirmed as NIH director, you'll be with leading an agency that desperately needs reform. Last year, I released several proposals outlining ways to modernize, improving operations to better serve the American. I look forward to hearing your vision today and working with you on these proposals. With that, I recognize Senator Sanders for his opening statement.
Dr. Bhattacharya. The NIH, $48 billion, largest funder of medical research in the world. Research led to free prescription drugs that have significantly improved the lives of American people throughout the world. I think all of us are proud of those accomplishments. But having said that, say a few words about concern. I don't have to tell any American the healthcare system in our country is broken, is failing. We spend almost twice as much per capita on healthcare as any other industrialized nation. Yet we have 85 million people who are uninsured or underinsured. We don't have enough doctors, nurses, dentists, mental health specialists. Not only is our life expectancy 4 years lower than other wealthy countries, the bottom 50% in this country live on average 7 years. Poor, working class 7 years. Very relevant that we are talking right now. We pay, as I think America knows, highest prices in the world. Drugs, no great secret there. In some cases, we pay more than 10 times of what our friends in Canada or Europe pay. In my view, not only has the federal government not effectively regulated the price of drugs, they have over the years provided hundreds of billions of dollars of research and development in new prescription drugs that have provided enormous benefits, financial benefits, to some of the most profitable pharmaceutical companies in the world. 2023, I had the privilege of chairing this committee, released a report that found the average price of new treatment that NIH scientists helped invent. NIH research over the past 20 years is $111,000. Virtually all cases, American taxpayers are paying far more than people in other countries for the exact same medicine that the NIH taxpayers helped develop. We developed the drug, and we end up paying 10 times more than other countries for the drug that our taxpayer dollars helped develop. For example, Dallas Pfizer charged American prostate cancer over $179,000 for Xtandi, while the exact same drug can be purchased in Japan just $18,000. We do the research, we pay for it as taxpayers, then we get ripped off by companies. In my view, we need an NIH director who is prepared to take on the breed pharmaceutical industry and use every tool at his or her disposal to substantially lower the cost of drugs. Not a new issue that people on this committee have been talking about for decades. So, with all due respect, Dr. Bhattacharya, President Trump will not be giving you that authority. I don't know what your views are on the subject. You're not going to have that authority. That authority will rest on the past several weeks. It has become abundantly that it really does not matter who the president nominates to be director of NIH. And I don't mean to be saying that. But it doesn't matter who he nominates to be director of the NIH, Secretary of Labor, the Secretary of Education, or of Food and Drug Administration. The real person in charge of all these federal agencies, Mr. Elon Musk. That will continue to be the case no matter who Senate confirms this. My understanding that Mr. Musk and his minions at DOJ have moved to terminate some 1,200 employees at the NIH already, 6% staff. Further, I've been told that Musk and DOJ played a major role in freezing nearly all grant money, including grants that could lead to potential cure for cancer, Alzheimer's, and other life-threatening disease. So, bottom line is that, in my view, Bill, gentlemen, we having up there, and again, no, is Mr. Musk. And Mr. Chairman, I would hope very much. I think the American people would be very, if we could bring real leader, the NIH, Department of Education, many other agencies up for us. I will be looking forward to work with you, see if we can schedule a hearing with you. Thank you.
Before we turn to the nominee for his own opening statement, Bhattacharya will be introduced by Senator Pete Ricketts, who will make clear the connection between you and Nebraska. Not is, but Senator Ricketts.
Well, thank you, Chairman Cassidy. It is an honor and a privilege to be able to introduce Dr. J. Bhattacharya, President nominee for the Director of the Institute of Health. And I had the opportunity to meet Dr. Bhattacharya during the COVID pandemic. A little bit about myself. I was governor of Nebraska, but prior life, I actually was a biology major undergrad, worked in bio published. For a brief moment in time, I was actually involved in World Sport. And during the COVID pandemic, obviously we didn't know a lot. So I was getting great advice from our folks. But I also reached out to talk to other folks about how we should the pandemic. And one of the things about Dr. Bhattacharya is he showed great intellectual courage because he offered alternative suggestions about how to the pandemic. Now, we know now that young people are not really impacted by the virus as much as older people. And typically in the past, we had a policy of let's protect vulnerable people and let go about life. Really kind of turned that on its head for the COVID because we didn't know. Dr. Bhattacharya helped give me a perspective, really demonstrate that he was thinking not just about how does the virus, but if we do, how will that? There were other shut. For example, we saw many school districts across the country shut down, and certainly in Nebraska as well. March, April, we made those recommendations as well. However, in July, with Director of Education, we expect kids to be in classrooms. And that was important because kids need to be in class. Now, one of the downsides of the pandemic is that kids learn better in the classroom, generally with their kids. So one of the results of the 2022 National Report Card, Nebraska scored highest in fourth test scores, 8th grade math, second overall. We did very well in reading as well because kids were back. I saw states like California where they weren't in the. I just worry about those kids' education. Not Dr. Bhattacharya helped us think about broadly how are we going to look at everybody, not just about the virus, but mental health, education. And in fact, political, they ranked all 50 states on things like health outcomes, education, economy, and social well-being. And Nebraska ranked number one overall. We're the political ranked as number one best on because of
Who was governor?
This is why I was governor. This is why I was governor. Well, right. If there had been another guy governor, I probably would have bragged about him too. But this is about when I was governor. So the point is, going to people like Dr. Bhattacharya, who, he's been published in 135 peer-reviewed publications, brought a variety of topics, law, medicine, but having a broader perspective really helped us frame Nebraska, helped be very, very successful outside forces like Politico. So I think what you get Bhattacharya is somebody who understands the method, that it's not all about, hey, we all agree on this, publish research paper out there replicated. Other people are supposed to replicate that, see if they get the same results. Don't. The papers disagree. It's okay. I read a lot of research papers during the pandemic. Guess what? A lot of them didn't agree. That's what science is about. It's not supposed to be about, we all have groupthink, that this is the established way it is. It's about challenging ideas and about thinking, well, you've got this idea, prove it. And okay, you've done this experiment. I'm going to replicate it. See if that's the way you said it. That's the way research. This is what Dr. Bhattacharya in the real world demonstrated. Pandemic, he had the courage. Wait a second. I know this is what the established way of thinking is, but I think there's an alternative way to look. And because he did that, because he had that courage, I can tell you specifically in Nebraska, and our school kids benefited by class, state benefited on a number of different areas: health, social well-being, economy, education. We benefit. So I highly recommend you, Dr. Great. Use NIH past so he gets how that program works. He'll be a great person to be able to make sure that we've got the right way that we're giving those grants, transparency, accountability, accomplish what we want to accomplish. Basic research, why health system do. So with that, thank you.
Senator Rick. Dr. Bhattacharya, you are like to give an opening statement.
Chairman Cassidy, Ranking Member Sanders, members of the Senate Health. I am honored to be humbled by. I'm delighted to have with me my wife. My two other adult children, Joe and Ben, today, but here we spirit. The NIH played a pivotal role in my career. I served for decades as a standing member of NIH grant committees. I helped train many trainees prepare for scientific careers with NIH support. And I want NIH funding to study population chronic disease. I've made the study of scientific institutions, including NIH itself, a focus of my own. NIH is the crown jewel of American biomedical. The long, illustrious history supporting breakthroughs in biology. I have utmost respect for the NIH scientists and staff over the decades contributed to the NIH's mission to support scientific discovery and health and lengthen life is vital to our indeed the world. I love the post-pandemic American biomedical are at a crossroads. November 2024 study reported that only 26% of the American public had a great deal of confidence in science backed by public investment. 23% have not much or no confidence at all. So, how can I help NIH better? I have 5 concrete goals confirmed. First, NIH research focused on research that solves American chronic. American health is going back. Life expectancy flatlined, while plummeted during the pandemic, and still has not bounced back to pre-pandemic levels. Chronic disease crisis is severe, with hundreds of millions of Americans, children and adults, suffering from obesity, heart disease, cancer, and more. If confirmed, I will carry out Trump Kennedy's agenda, committing the NIH to address the dire chronic health of the country's gold standard. Second, NIH-supported science should be replicable, reproducible, and generalized. Fortunately, much modern biomedical fails to face the test. The NIH itself, just last year, faced a research integrity scandal involved research on Alzheimer's, throws into question hundreds of researchers. The data generated by scientists is not reliable. The product of such science helps. It is no stretch slow progress is linked to this problem. The NIH can and must solve the crisis of scientific data reliability. My leadership. Third, if confirmed, I will establish a culture of respect, science, and over the last few years, top NIH officials oversaw a culture of cover-up, obfuscation, lack of tolerance for ideas that differ. Consent is the very essence of science. I will foster a culture where NIH leadership will actively encourage different perspectives, create an environment where scientists, including early career scientists and scientists who disagree with me, can express respectfully. Fourth, NIH must recommit to its mission to fund the most innovative biomedical research agenda possible to improve America. My plan is to ensure that the NIH invests in cutting edge in every field to make big advances rather than just small incremental progress. Fifth, NIH must embrace, vigorously regulate risk research that has the possibility of causing. Must regulate research that has the possibility of causing. Should embrace transparency in all its operations. While the vast majority of biomedical research poses no risk of harm to research subjects or the public, the NIH must ensure that it never supports work that might cause it. If confirmed, I will work with Congress. While I believe there are real problems to be addressed, I want to finish by reiterating great respect for the work. If confirmed, I'll carry out President Trump's agenda, make public science institutions of the country worthy of trust, and serve to make America healthy.
Thank you. I'll start with a question. One thing that's been a real topic has been the issue of measles, vaccines, and autism. And we can see that the false article in Lancet decade has led to a lot of people not getting their child vaccinated. There's now a child who died from a vaccine preventable disease. And let me repeat, the child who died from vaccine. The secretary has put out an editorial, which is, if you just read it, kind of understanding of it is that you get. Now, I've been told that you have said we need to invest in NIH resources that looking at the link between measles vaccine and autism. I'd not heard that directly. It's hearsay. Any comment on that?
Senator, tragic child died from vaccine. I fully support children being vaccinated for diseases like measles that can be prevented with vaccine. As far as autism and vaccine, I don't generally believe that there is a link based on my reading. But what I have seen is that there's tremendous trust in the medicine and science pandemic. We do have no senator of sharp ties in autism, and I don't know, and I don't think any scientist really knows the cause. So I would support the agenda of broad scientific agenda based on data to get answers.
But this has been fairly well effective and exhaustive, and there's limited resources. And if we keep plowing over ground that has been plowed over, knowing you can never prove a negative, and since we don't know the cause, we'll still have a we've got a responsibility. How do we address those things that we don't know or that can ameliorate those things that are related to this crisis of chronic? My state, by the way, is terribly affected. I'm totally with you. But what I want to make sure is there's appropriate use. So again, just going back to, and do you have an idea or an agenda that would once more prove that measles vaccine is not associated with autism, either the schedule, the vaccine, or anything else associated? My concern is the more we pretend like this is an issue, the more we will have children dying.
So I guess I turn it around and say, don't want to disprove a negative, but I want to address rise of that.
I accept that. I think that's a lot of. We need to do that.
That's a positive.
But I'm asking a specific question. Will we once more have to go back over this particular? Because that has been exhausting.
I think, as I said, I don't think that there's a reason I'm not wholeheartedly saying yes to your question, which I have the instinct of mine is to do that there are people who might agree with me. I want to
but that's right.
Yeah.
I mean, there's people who disagree that the world is round. And I say that not to minimize these concerns, but people still think Elvis is alive. And so if you just say someone disagrees with me, so therefore I'm going to put precious, limited taxpayer dollars to this and not to addressing issues of cancer. We've lost. There's an opportunity cost there. You're the economist. What am I doing talking about opportunity cost? So I'm pressing you on this because I think that kind of is a framework. If just because somebody is upset about something, do we have the opportunity cost of devoting resources to something which has already been pretty well examined?
Yes, you're absolutely right. You don't need to address every idea that turns. But if those results not want back children for back, it is well tested. My sense is that my inclination is to give people good data. That's how you address it. I don't know.
But I'm not quite sure at what endpoint we say we've got good. Because
I'm convinced we have good data on it. But if other people don't agree with it, then they don't back children. If I'm confirmed as NIH director, the one lever I'll have, that's really.
But that good data already exists. You're a scientist. It seems more an endorsement. With appropriate allocation of current dollars would be a better way to spend precious, limited federal dollars.
I think the most important child health problems have to do with childhood diabetes, childhood obesity. I think
we should be studying that.
That's where that's the vast the effort to go. Prevention of childhood diseases, also I think important. All of those, you and I agree, in priorities. That's priority.
Senator Sanders.
Chairman. Sorry. Mentioned a moment ago, in some cases we pay 10 times more for prescription drugs, same drugs. We pay something like 1 in 4 Americans can't afford prescription doctors, right? Sick. Why do we pay the highest price in the world for prescription drugs? What will you do if you are confirmed?
I don't have a full answer to that question, but I agree with your concern and the fact that you pay the highest price. If I'm NIH director, if I'm confirmed as NIH director, I think there's a very specific thing that we haven't done. The NIH should fund research on off-label use, off-patent, inexpensive. I'll give you an example. There was a tremendous tremendous achievement. There was a study done in the United Kingdom of cheap steroids called dexamethasone, very early in the pandemic, used during.
I don't mean, I apologize, but I don't have a lot. I hear what you're saying, and I'm not in disagreement with it. The question is, historically, the NIH has, as we all know, $10 billion in developing important drugs. And yet, despite that taxpayer expenditure, we end up paying far more than countries. Should a company that benefits from the taxpayer dollar research, basic research, the NIH, be able to charge the price that they want, or should we attach to those contracts a reasonable pricing clause that says, hey, we help develop this drug and it's effective, you're going to have to charge a reasonable for it.
So that's an issue where previous NIH directors said it's very difficult for, if as for an NIH director alone, that's something that Congress have to work together.
Not quite true. I think what we're learning from the president, a lot can be done through executive order. And I would disagree. I think that's something. Ken, would you be open to that idea?
I guess I would focus on imagine the NIH focus support for relatively.
Okay, I'm hearing a no. Okay, ask you, talked about life expectancy. Very important. Why is it that working class people in America live 7 years shorter lives?
Senator, it's chronic crisis.
But why does somebody who is working class end up with more chronic disease? But
Senator, that's something I've devoted my career to. I think that tragic that there's such version in life expectancy. I think the solution that NIH director, if I'm confirmed, I would fully commit to address the health problems that lead to that outcome. The rise in obesity, the rise in diabetes.
Okay. Again, I apologize for interrupting. What role does food industry out there sells a lot of crap to our children? Spend billions of dollars advertising products that are really not healthy. What will you do?
Senator, I think excellent research to try to find alternatives to make clear the link to the junk food that kids eat and subsequent health outcomes. Convince parents, I hope, to make better choices for their kids, to help them make better choices. I think the role of research is to elucidate those, give people tools.
You're going to have, if you confirm, a fully public. Would you support what a number of countries around the world are doing, saying to the food industry they cannot do TV advertising for unhealthy food?
I mean, if I'm confirmed, I would simply advocate for give parents tools they need so that their kids.
Answering the question sounds like a good politician. There are TV ads as we speak, like telling kids to tell their mother that they desperately need some food, which is really. There are countries that say that those ads should not be allowed to talk to kids. You support those? Who agree?
There's a move to encourage advertisers to not push healthy foods. I certainly would, willing as.
But you could lead that move, not be. Will you help lead?
I mean, absolutely. We want to make America. I don't know specifically how one would lead such a move, but I would be willing to work with the Senator.
Thank you very much.
Senator Paul.
Senator Sanders, I'm right off. Probably you could transform health more in our country with one policy. That would be removing junk food, sugared drinks, chips, Twinkies, ding dongs from foods. We have an epidemic of obesity, particularly among our poor, particularly among those food stamps. Why not just take food, take healthy food? We do this for WIC. We decided for pregnant too, but I've had a bill out for quite some time. I have no one from the other side of the aisle. So I'm glad to hear of your concern for junk food and hope you get to consider that. We talked about precious resources. Say, well, gosh, we can't study autism or any link done.
with vaccines. The problem with that is there is a great deal of vaccine hesitancy, and there does need to be. Doesn't mean we need 99% of the NIH budget on vaccines, but certainly I think we have room to have another study to try to convince those who are hesitant. We ought to look at populations of people who take no vaccine, Amish, others, try to compare them in a scientific way to those who do, and see if we can learn something from that. But one way to have more precious resources directed towards good, to get rid of the frivolous study. William Proctor talked in the 70s. I've been talking about this for a dozen years. This is from the NIH. 2.1 million, studying whether or not when you're at the Luby's cafeteria, somebody in front of you sneezes on the food, you're more or less likely to take the food. I mean, that kind of stuff's ridiculous. You have real scientists who aren't doing it. That's been going on for decades. One of the first things that Prockmeyer mentioned was a study on what people have. That would be great for Cosmopolitan magazine. Really highly suggestive. It's a stupid idea for taxpayer money for study. But that was 30 years ago. One of the ones he hated the worst was what makes people more aggressive, gin or tequila. So they fed half the codfish gin and the other half the codfish tequila, and we all know it's got to be tequila, right? I mean, geez, come on, we don't need to. But the thing is, there's lots of frivolous stuff out there that gives good science a bad name. I vote for almost no spending up here. Almost all of them voted for money with the NIH. They've got to do a better job, and one of the things I hope is that you will direct it towards diabetes, heart disease, cancer, Alzheimer's, these big diseases. But I don't think it's just good people. We can change the way the grants are, that somebody on the grant committee maybe should be from the major 5 diseases, should be on every behavioral study to make sure we're not wasting it on, whether lonely rats use more cocaine than, well-liked rats use. I mean, that was from last year. So what do you think about trying to look at the way we do try to, populate the people on the grant? You said you were on a grant committee. Try to populate the grant where attention being paid maybe to big 5 diseases. We don't get lost down a rat hole, so to speak. Do you have any?
Senator, I think that the resources the NIH, the taxpayers give the NIH, pressure. If confirmed, I absolutely changing the grant committee makeup so that they focus on the most important questions that impact American health. I mean, there should be a mix of basic science, not a basic science itself, but I can understand how some somewhat abstract have fun. But at the same time, research should really be focused on making America healthy. That's the mission.
You mentioned, and you got cut off a little bit on, this was a pretty amazing COVID. Steroids and it's been around forever. They found that a 36% reduction in COVID deaths, people entering the ICU, either going on the ventilator or almost on the ventilator. There was like a huge death rate among these people. They found something for pennies that would cure them. And yet, when Dr. Fauci came to this committee in March 2020, I asked him about using high-dose steroids the way they do for exercise and fasciitis and other infections. And he said, they don't work about it. He was adamant steroids didn't work. It turned out to be the best cure and the cheapest. And yet the knowledge didn't get out there because there was a bias. Do you think that we can change that kind of bias here, open debate, it'll make a difference for these?
Absolutely, Senator. That was such a signal success, this study. But the shame is that it was a group in the UK that ran that study, not a group at the NIH. That's something the NIH with billions of dollars. It's something that is changeable just with prioritization alone. You can align the incentives so that it looks for those.
Senator Murray.
I don't think that crazy say that Trump and Elon Musk are really putting a lot of saving research at risk. We've had grant freezes, pauses on advisory meetings, pauses on clinical trials, mass hearings being carried out by the so-called DOJ. It has really threatened our ability to treat childhood cancer, to mitigate the effects of Alzheimer's disease and other forms of dementia, and to better understand and treat women's health issues. Do you support the recent research firings grant been implemented by Trump and Doge?
Senator, I was not involved in this confirmed as director. I really committed to all the science aid that the NIH support have the resources they need to meet the mission of the NIH, make America do research health.
Well, support further at NIH or staff?
Senator, I don't support. You know, I don't have any intention to cut anyone. If I'm confirmed as director.
No, all the grant freezes and the pauses and all the advisory committee meetings, all the pauses that are now trials that are happening.
So, Senator, I've read the press of it. It's hard to know outside, not interact with agents. I'm gonna assess it day one. I'm gonna understand what resources the whole NIH needs, and make sure that those the scientists that are working at have the resources life-saving work to do. That scientists that are supported by the NIH also. The personnel position is hard to talk about unless I'm actually confirmed, and I have more.
I am deeply concerned about the funding there, the research that's been stopped, and all that's going on. And I want a very strong assurance that we'll get that moving again day one.
Senator, absolutely. I'm going to look very carefully at the decision. I want the NIH to staff absolutely appropriate mission. Happy to work with you and other members of Congress to happen.
Just a few weeks ago, the Trump administration announced an illegal plan to cap indirect cost rates 15%. That amounts to massive funding for research institutions, large and small, red and blue states, everyone, and brings a lot of life-saving research. Sick kids wouldn't get the treatment, clinical trials shut down. I want to ask you, do you know what the indirect cost rate was for Stanford, your own?
I think it's on the order of.
So if the 15% cap was implemented, Stanford would lose approximately $160 million a year. So what do you say today to your colleagues at Stanford, research scientists across? But what do you say to folks about that?
Senator, I've been a researcher. I've earned an NIH grant from the NIH while I've been the money that comes to me, the direct cost as researchers, I understand exactly for that. The indirect cost, kind of a tip, 55% tip on top of it goes to administration. No, Senator, no, Senator. What I mean is that I don't know where that goes. That a lot of it likely goes to things that are worthwhile, and I've heard folks, including say that. And I agree with support for buildings, light bulbs, we can see in the lab, and a whole host of other important things. But there's a lot of distrust about where the money is. The trust the public health establishment. I think transparency regarding indirect costs is absolutely worth it. There's something that universities stick by working together to make sure that where that is clear. I want to make sure that the money goes. Want the money specific that goes to things that are not research are labeled indirect costs. Better yet.
I wanted you would get the research committees going again, the advisory immediately. Yeah,
as soon as if I'm confirmed, I want those. All that to go.
We should all recognize that NIH is the largest medical researcher in the world. There is a global leader. We're extremely proud of. Nearly a third of all the Nobel Prizes today to support science and supported by funds. So we have to moving forward. Extremely dramatic firings, stopping of.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Welcome. I very much enjoyed our wide range discussion in my office. I'm going to follow up about indirect. As I indicated to you, I am strongly opposed to the administration's ill-conceived and completely arbitrary proposal to impose a 15% cap on indirect costs for NIH grants. Research labs, universities across the state of have contacted me to describe the devastating impact that this cap would have on life-saving and life-enhancing biometric research, on ongoing clinical trials, and on main research related. In 2023, NIH supported 1,407 jobs in this field in the state of Maine alone. I think it's important that we all acknowledge that a one-size-fits-all makes absolutely no sense. And that is why NIH negotiates with individual grant recipients what the indirect cost cap should be. And it's legitimate to say that we should take another look at that. Are we doing for Stanford versus Jackson Laboratories for the University of Maine? Those are legitimate questions. But to impose this arbitrary cap makes no sense at all. Furthermore, and I really stress this is against the law. Since 2017, we have had language in the labor HHS appropriation bill that specifically prohibits the indirect cost formula from being, and yet that, but without discretion or, and the language has been carried every single, including in the continuing resolution that we're now operating under. So I'm not surprised as of the order. So if confirmed, will you work immediately to rectify and reverse course on having a one-size-fits-all 15%?
Senator, if confirmed, I absolutely commit to following the law to address this very directly. I think that one of the issues, to me, it's an indicator of trust that some have of first scientific process. So I want to make sure that address those concerns as well. But I absolutely commit to following the law. I'll help counsel immediately and work with you, Senator, as you look up meeting to make sure that you're.
Thank you. You testified that NIH should focus on research involving chronic, and I agree that we should do a lot in this area. Half of all American families report having Alzheimer's disease in their family, and they're suffering from this progressive and ultimately is tragic. But the impact is not just humanitarian, it also has a huge financial on our nation. And that cost burden is expected to reach $1 trillion by 2050. For more than 12 years, Congress supported a national strategic plan to look at ways for research to come up with the means, prevention, effective treatments, and ultimately a cure. I co-authored as we call it, in 2011, and last year with my colleague Warner led the reauthorization national plan through 2035. If you're confirmed, will you continue to support the national targeting Alzheimer's?
Absolutely, Senator. For me, it's not just a theoretical issue, although I have studied my research work. I believe there are very promising ways to prevent Alzheimer's, not support, including colleagues of mine at person, because they have aligned with single dominant narrative about what caused it. I want to expand the set of things to look at so that they can should have think much more of the investments we've made. I want to make sure that all the get addressed. I think it's vitally important. I'll say not but also.
Address my question.
Senator Ball.
I begin by discussing called thousands of NIH grants and billions of dollars NIH research funding. So canceled study sections and importantly advisory council meetings mean that NIH cannot award grants to fund critical medical. Additionally, the administration to illegally cap indirect costs, or got several questions on that, indirect costs, and this in blatant defiance of appropriation law, which prohibits NIH at these costs. I'm the ranking member of the Labor Subcommittee, and I've been raised. On Monday, I revealed $65 million funding Alzheimer's, stopping 14 Alzheimer's disease research centers from finding ways to treat and prevent disease. If NIH does not reverse course, really disaster. The center run out. So, Dr. Bhattacharya, do you agree with President Trump that NIH stopped funding Alzheimer's?
Senator, I don't believe President Trump has that authority. Of course, I was not.
Right.
Senator, if confirmed, I will follow the law. Direct cost recovery. My commitment is to make sure that every single researcher at the NIH, single researcher supported by NIH, has the resources they need to do their work.
Researchers who've been fired right now. This is false funding for 14 also. Do you agree with that?
Senator, I don't have access outside. If confirmed, I absolutely will look into it. Sure that they're.
I know not people at pending your information proceeding here. You're not unaware, and you should have a position on this. I mean, you've accepted President Trump's nomination, and you're watching these acts taking place in an organization that may someday lead. Do you agree with stripping away of funding, and also?
Senator, if I'm confirmed, I will make sure that NIH researchers that's funded by the NIH side have resources they need so that they do their research. That's the mission of the NIH. I'm confirmed that job will be to make.
So moving on, I'm concerned about how the administration recent act putting especially early stage researchers at risk. We talked about that when you visited with me in my office. In the year 2016, I worked with Senator Collins at the Next Generation Research Act. And since then, NIH funding early stage investment. But now, precisely the ones being targeted, and Elon Musk, unelected, unaccountable capacity. So due to NIH funding, university admissions graduates slowed or even stopped. Postdoc fellows can't. President Trump, Elon Musk fired 12 far, including hundreds of scientists conducting life. They put the rest them on notice that more reduction and new restrictions from could push out about 3,000 promised early by renew their. This is the that you may be running. These acts, generation of science, they threaten our global leader in biomedicine. They threaten our future health and our ability to fight. Frankly, they threaten. So, Dr. Bhattacharya, you've said that as NIH in court, how will you compare the damage?
Please answer quickly. No.
Very, very briefly, I'm very committed to make sure early career research has resources. I think that not just for their own, so they have ideas that are cutting edge.
So you'll hire that.
Senator, I wasn't involved to date. I will look very carefully at the technology.
Thank you. And for the record, funding has not been canceled. The meeting to allocate funding has been delayed, but just for the record. Senator Marshall.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I listen to the conversation today, I'm reminded that we all should doubt our own infallibility. And we should doubt the infallibility of the NIH as well. I'm flabbergasted as I listen to this conversation of people that really have never been involved in this process, that they don't understand indeed the infallibility. When I think of the NIH, the waste that has occurred, and I think of all the waste is the path we went down since 2005, 2006. Dr. Bhattacharya, do you recall there's I'm trying to remember an amyloid study that really, so all the NIH funds that direction years, and then we find out, oh my, it was NIH funded research. Do you remember that project?
There's a whole project that focused the NIH equal hypothesis, at the expense of other hypotheses. I agree with you, but that's the key scientific progress. We have to, as scientists, say we might, because when we meet data that fits with us, where we have ideas that we disagree with, maybe that other idea is right, we're the one that's wrong. It's only by, if I'm confirmed as director, I want to make sure that all the range of hypotheses are supported. That's how you make progress. One of the reasons I think that we've not made progress as much as you have is because we've got not supported a sufficiently wide.
And we also have 8 different supporting institutes setting it. They don't communicate with each other as well. I mean, my guess is when you make a 5-year grant, 20% of those could be stopped after because they went down a road, a dead end. It's time to start over. I'm glad they're. I think that there's a significant amount of waste, fraud, and abuse, and in the studies funded by the NIH. Let's talk about chronic sex. The NIH spent a disproportionate amount of money on research on diseases that impact a very small, minuscule amount of, meanwhile, 60% of Americans have a chronic disease. Speak a little bit about your vision of research for figuring out the causes and treatments of chronic disease, specifically how food as medicine might be intertwined in your vision.
Senator, I think the chronic problem is something that the NIH ought to have done a better job in the last several years. The mission of the NIH is to address the health of the American have, expand life expectancy. And we have not achieved that. It's flatlined. And you say food as medicine, that's the kind of research idea that would be very difficult to get for because it's not within the scope of the people who decide what support. I think we should expand that of ideas to address the problem we don't know. Chronic disease problems is so broad. We need to have a lot more tolerance that the top scientists control the field. We need to allow other scientists who have other ideas. One of them to have. I don't know what's going to be, but yeah, I do know that if you don't,
Are you committed to helping us figure out?
absolutely, I think that is the heart and soul of our Make America again move. Millions and millions of Americans look to us to do that, and I'm concerned by absolutely.
Yeah, and a big part of that is that thanks to Dr. Fauci, no one trusts the HC anymore, and we need a reference to try to say, well, what is the latest science? Science is never settled; it's always changed. But what is it in ultra-processed food that's causing this uptick in chronic? Speak a little bit about the indirect cost of these situations. Look, I think most of us understand that that's just another grift for universities, and we're paying their unfair share of overhead going forward. But what I'm concerned about is 2/3 of research dollars are funneled 4 or 5 states, just like your commitment for us to buy over states, spread the love a little bit. It'll prevent inbreeding, and hope that you do realize that not every good scientist is.
Senator, I have science colleagues across the hear your concern that the NIH ought to be more committed than it has to make sure that every scientist, no matter where they are, including California, the north border, to get applicants supporting the IDEAS program that the NIH uses to identify scientists.
And just to make an exclamation point, the indirect costs of Kansas University or Kansas State are going to be less than the coast. I don't know why. It's their own problem. If their indirect costs are that high, it's their own problem. We can do the research more efficiently, less expensive at Kansas State University or KU, then let's move it there.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator Cassidy. Good morning, and welcome. Congratulations on your nomination, Doctor. I'm going to start out, which is, if directed by the president to take action that would break the law, would you follow the law or would you follow the direction?
Senator, I don't believe the president will ever ask.
Well, that strains credulity, especially the last few weeks. Disappointing answer. I will follow whether the president directs you to break it. Now, let me go to the second question. President Trump has effectively frozen NIH funding for existing grants, including grants that directly treat people with rare diseases. My office has heard from Christine in Brentwood, New Hampshire, who is receiving treatment for colon cancer through an NIH-funded clinical trial, but now no longer knows the fate of her care because these freezes have delayed doctors who might be needing to hire new research assistants to the trial. This colon cancer trial may not have the research staff that they need to continue treating patients. If confirmed, will you commit to reversing the across-the-board funding freeze at NIH that have delayed life-saving?
First, I absolutely law in response to previous, but I also say on the question now, absolutely, I think that if I'm confirmed as director, I want to make sure that every single study that is advancing America, the health, our knowledge about health, including forward.
Well, the freeze is really delaying things, and it can have an impact now on treatment, especially treatment of cancer, which can be very time. That's the harm that these illegal freezes by this administration have really put into play. And I hope you will speak up loudly, clearly, and push back the president and Mr. Musk on these freezes. These were appropriated funds. Article 1 of the Constitution and the law says that the administration is supposed to be spending those in accordance with the grant, the clinical trial plan. President Trump has not only effectively frozen NIH funding for existing clinical trials, he's also stopped review of new grant applications to help develop the cures for pediatric cancer. Your written testimony focuses heavily on questions of research, but you don't lay out a plan for supporting research by our scientists across the country to help treat devastating diseases. You've talked about this with some of my colleagues, but if confirmed, will will you immediately restart all NIH academic review committees and get all appropriated money out the door?
Confirmed, absolutely. My job would be to make sure that those fundamental scientific meetings, activities, the purpose of the NIH director is for the mission made.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to forego the other question I was going to say this. For people watching, for parents who are worried about autism in particular, let me just say a couple of things. We see more cases of autism in this country than we used to for a number of, part of which is much better at diagnosing it earlier and understanding what the spectrum of it. We have ongoing science that is beginning to point at the NIH, among other places, to genetic issues that may play a part in the development of autism and environmental. The now retracted study that suggested wrongly, fraudulently, that autism might have a relationship to the MMR vaccine has been refuted by 7 studies every continent that involve hundreds of thousands of children. So for parents out there who may think that vaccines have something to do with autism, there is no scientific evidence that it does. And it disappoints me greatly that neither you nor the Secretary now of Health and Human Services are willing to say that declaratively and strongly, because what you do when you hesitate, what the Secretary does quite cynically in my view, when he hesitates, is you turn and sow doubt and worry at a time when we should be focused on actually finding the cure, the cause of the cure of autism. And similarly, when we talk about the causes of chronic disease in our kids, there is plenty of evidence. You've talked about working class folks in America have worse health than richer people. And yet you are about to join an administration that is dedicated to giving more tax cuts to billionaires and taking away things from families, money and services from families that could help them live healthier, better lives, and have children less subjected to things like hunger and housing insecurity, which contribute to chronic illness. So I hope you will think about that. I am over my time, and I think Senator Tuberville is.
Always harder to say that and mispronounce, or got a hard job. Our president job, because don't, and he's doing the right. You're gonna have a tough job. You're gonna have to put your team together, do the same thing. We have got to use American tax money the right. So, give me your plan of how you're going to do this. You come into office, you're gonna put.
Senator, I say back well as to me, that background would understand that every dollar wasted on frivolous study, dollar not spent, every dollar wasted on administrative costs, needed, dollar not. The team I'm going to put together is hyper focused that the portfolio of grants that NIH funds devoted to the chronic disease problems is going to be devoted to making sure we have not just incremental progress, but research projects that have huge advance in treatment of cancer, for diabetes, for obesity. That's how I'm going to decide. And the NIH is actually, I'm blessed in some ways. It already has so many their devices areas we don't know of. And I want to tap that after I talk to a person who's already a leader to understand where those opportunities.
Past 4 years, been on this committee, and we've obviously gone through COVID, devastating to the world. Transparency, trust. Most people don't know what the hell NIH stands for, okay? But now they do. Oh, you said science has, but people also have to trust. You know, we're finding out we have biolabs where wars going on, and we're funding them. So you've got to be on top of that. You've got American schools say, listen, we're going to keep an eye on biolabs in North Carolina or wherever we have, because it scares me to death. What's your plan there of getting trust back?
Senator, first of all, I want to make sure that work Congress sure that there's appropriate regulation. The NIH to have, I don't think to be doing any research that has potential cause. I want to work with Congress to ensure that. As far as trust, I think the key thing is we have to be utterly open. As if I'm confirmed, I'll be at the head of an organization that's a scientific organization. As a citizen, I would often look for FOIA response, and they'd be fully redacted during the time. You can't have trust unless you are transparent. As if I'm confirmed as a NIH director, I fully commit to making sure the American people see all of the activities open with limited sort of obfuscation, characterized portion of way that they interact with American.
Very visual, television, tell them the truth. Don't hide. Here's that doesn't work. That out. You know, Chairman Cash left a letter last asked a question about a grant I funded folks, children transitioning genders. The study followed all these to a devastating. So how can we ensure that NIH does?
Well, so first of all, if you have a negative result, it's politically. Usually, you have an obligation to support, right? So the NIH funds study that shows that the gender transition doesn't reduce suicide adolescents. That research is not supported, even though they think it's politically. So I want to make sure that NIH research is required to support negative. The ways that but I think as far as like the prioritization study, as I was telling Paul, we want to make sure that studies are focused on the diseases that really are hurting America. Obesity, a lot of the research that that's so easy to come up with. One of a shrimp on a treadmill once funded. I don't. It's not that I'm necessarily against that, but the American taxpayers should focus on these American research should be focused on those health. I want to make sure that NIH firm focused on exactly.
Hit it stuff off. Thank you for all your service. We've already heard today and already well aware of CAP. Correct piece. Traumatic system is now on a pause. Clearly, the solution comes from parent, well thought care. Center of the country, south, north, west. It's all in level. How long, assume that the get the stuff sorted out, the gas comes down a little, how long would it take to create a new system?
Senator, I don't know that it would take just necessarily. I think the key thing is, as you said, the transparency, right? So audit of spending of indirect would help inform the decision. It's a complicated question. Of course, I wasn't involved in the decision of the CAP, but I'm confirmed as NIH director. That's very careful. The broad problem is deep distrust by the American of universities and the scientific establishment burned during the. To address that transparency, that transparency is what
we agree on that. We've been working on a project called the DeAndre Food Project. A little bit about it. The idea is to codify activities the NIH on co-occurring disorders down multitude. I'm not asking endorsement, but I am asking work very serious about it. And then also look at more broadly on cost to the NIH.
Senator, I'm absolutely committed to that. And I'd be delighted to work with you on that project you mentioned, as well as other projects. I think there's tremendous opportunities for cross page. I think that the back of the minds of so many reform proposals over the years try to make sure that NIH research doesn't stay siloed within one institute, that it's useful for research scholars.
Right. I want to spend a little bit of time thank you at a moment looking at for a lot of just somehow allowing the United States to take one fact strikes me that 10-year period, 99 drugs approved by the FDA were developed with research, large extent from state. Are you worried about the ability to do you think we're being ripped off? In fact, we are after stuff, care about stuff, we are leading the world. In some way, this is unfair.
Senator, I think the United States is the greatest, and one of the reasons it is that it has a clear commitment to doing fundamental research that benefits all of us. I think much of the NIH research does exactly. I don't view it as science, an amazing idea that solves, that treats, diabetes. Everyone on Earth benefits. So I think NIH is fundamentally an institution aimed at the public.
So here's a more difficult question that I've caused the suggest. Do you think we're spending enough in terms of where you're coming in? Part of your going to, are we running out of good ideas? Shortage of things really are.
I think that, as I outlined in my opening statement, real problems how the scientific establishment is operating, replicability crisis, a lack of desire to focus on the conditions that really are, and also sort of tentativeness to focus on big ideas. No matter what the budget is, to perform it in that. Happy to work with Congress, but
no, that we decided based on a lot of your advice. Do you think increase back just the past school year, the number of kindergarten kids that are exempted for one or more routine vaccinations has continued to rise, highest level reported. Is the rise back? Is that going to make vaccine-related research and it's less of a priority? And confirmed how you balance research chronic that.
Senator, I think the increasing skepticism I view as a hangover from the COVID pandemic, sort of overstatement about how the COVID vaccine works, makes it more important. Senator Secretary Kennedy has already said favors the MMR vaccine. I agree with him. I think that research, maybe I'm naive, Senator, but I believe very fundamentally that research done right, it's replicable, so persuasive that it'll to take action. That's operate under my.
Your lips, God's here. Thank you.
Senator Moody.
I am the most junior member on recently transitioned from my role as the great U.S. Senator. And one of the things I have paid most much work prior roles, whether that was a judge or a federal prosecutor, attorney general, have translated in my truly in a meaningful way talk to the nominees about the vision for these agencies, for roles that they're taking over, and how they might bring a different perspective, leadership, or ideas to bear. And I particularly enjoyed that in our discussion. I'm honored that I was the last meeting you had today. As you know, in Florida, my state, Florida, took a very deliberate, science, very thorough approach to making decisions. Tried to bear many varying opinions as not only what we were experiencing with the virus, but what was best about decisions and provide leadership, protect health, safety, and welfare of citizens. And to some extent, many of them were challenged, even the kind in the nation, really examining all aspects of information coming in, not just what was being pushed. And in many respects, many ideas and thoughts, scientific approaches were suppressed. And I want to talk to you a little bit about that, because I know you have had of how we led members. We opened our schools right back up right away, sued by a teacher. And everything from how we dealt with masks, the vaccine, there were misrepresentations abound. And so I want to talk to you about how your opinion on how Florida handled that, how you that might translate role. Do you feel like your scientists might have guarded, set aside of some government narrative that may not? I know even as 6 foot, for example, my office led a jury investigation on all kinds of misrepresentation. 6 foot rule to vaccines, and I just wanted to get your thoughts on that, how that affects your role forward.
Senator, thank you for that question. I am immensely proud to be called advisor the Florida response. One of the things I was actually involved in the case resulted in Florida kids go back to school. So even as my kids were left out of school, not allowed to go back to school buildings, the kids of Florida were allowed. The results are so much better. Florida has lower all-cause health. So I think Florida's response to tremendous success. I'm really glad you highlighted the role of censorship, scientific discussion. It was so fresh to be allowed my scientific in Florida. I think the root problem, because the pandemic is a very difficult thing. There's so many people is in an environment of uncertainty. The root problem was that people who had all ideas pressed. I personally was subject to censorship by the actions of the Biden administration. Science to succeed needs free. He's in an environment where there's tolerance for, and the reason I think why Florida did so well provided outlet so that the government of Florida, the state of Florida, got the best idea for it. You know, it's not that no mistakes that have any in a pandemic, but in order to do well, you have to allow people to open, even when the ideas are.
What best there, I believe, is taking publications or studies and having those replication of study be a priority. Publishing, not that. Can you elaborate?
Sure, Senator. There's so many studies are not well, but do a study and then someone else tries to do the study, cooperate and give data, try to do the replicate. Then other teams try to do it and they replicate. Many studies are published. No, it's not subject to replication at all. But replication is the heart and soul of what truth is. I write a study. You find the same answer. I'm more like right. I want to make NIH committed to that rather than authority.
Yeah.
So sorry,
Mr.
Senator. Yeah.
Chair.
Senator Kim.
Doctor, thanks for coming on. You had said before that you were in favor of centralizing in the decision-making at the NIH. I think, quote, restructure the NIH, allow there to be any more concern about individuals, a small number of individuals dominating decisions. Do you still stand by that? And if so, what's the importance?
Senator, I think I do stand by that. The key thing to me about centralization is a diversity of ideas to address uncertainties when we have problems that we don't answer to, we have to allow there to be many people with different ideas. Test having first, I talked already about there's smaller states, smaller states get access to NIH support. That's one way to having younger scientists or early career.
But you're also saying just who's making that decision, not where they're going, correct?
Well, I mean, if I'm confirmed as NIH director, the job will be to decide how to set process. I want to make sure those processes allow early career investment. I want to make sure that it allows science, non-traditional universities, not Harvard. I want to make sure that the people with different points of view about science, not just MLA hypothesis, other hypotheses, have some capacity.
So the decision-making process that will try to diversify that. I guess my question is, if you're pushing for a decision-making process, does that mean that you would oppose the HHS secretary or Trump from telling you to make decisions about where to spend money or funding?
Senator, I agree with the goal to make America healthy, meaning address the chronic disease crisis. That's a decision about allocation of different disease areas. The scientific ideas inside those.
What if the HHS secretary said, "I want to fund this specific branch, this university"?
There's a process, Senator, for deciding specific. Right? There's a scientific.
But is that one
panel.
of the processes? That's something that you feel like valid way in which decisions are made?
Senator, I don't believe that either secretary or the president would ever ask to do that.
Well, I guess the reason why I asked, you talked a lot about chronic. I think all of us can agree. My question to you is, do you think that our work on research of chronic disease needs to come at the expense of research?
Senator, I think that the allocation of funds to the different disease areas, first, Congress has a tremendous important role in deciding, and I'll work with Congress to make that happen. But also,
you think that we could probably do both chronic disease research and infectious disease research?
Yes.
Well, the reason I mentioned this, I asked these questions about Secretary's ability to direct NIH. He had a quote that just really stuck with me. He said, quote, "I'm going to say to NIH scientists, God bless you all. Thank you for public. We're going to give infectious disease a break about it." Now, does that sound like a good idea?
Senator, I is supportive of excellent infectious disease research. The idea that
you believe he no longer stands by that.
Senator, I don't know whether probably Twitter or people say Twitter, but as far as
you said it at a conference.
I don't know about, but my interaction with Secretary clearly committed to making sure that every health
in terms of a few other things, are there any vaccines out there that you are concerned about?
Senator, I was concerned about the COVID vaccine. Young men caused myocarditis.
And do you have a view on long COVID?
Senator, I think it's a problem that affects millions of Americans.
Is this something worth NIH funding?
Yes.
You had a quote before that I was concerned about. You said, quote, "There are more pressing health for the $1.1 billion that NIH will spend on COVID." That's still stand by that quote?
Senator, I think that the funds that have been spent to date on long COVID have not provided answers to patients. I think that they deserve answers. We need to do a better job with funds spent so that it actually better diagnostics, better stores, better.
On transparency, real quick, you talked about the importance of transparency. Are you familiar with something called the Richmond waiver? Okay, well, I ask if you're confirmed that you look into this. The secretary just reversed this, closed transparency, public comment period.
Thank you, Senator Kim. Senator Banks.
Congratulations. As I've said before, your nomination citing you showed incredible courage speaking the truth about COVID. Much of the rest of the world stayed silent. And free-thinking people everywhere have not forgotten.
stood for. And it's remarkable to see nominated to be the head of the very. I want to start asking you about lockdowns cause irreparable harm. They are still harming us 5 years. What is NIH's proper role in a pandemic, and how did Director Collins overstep that during?
Senator, the proper role of scientists is to answer basic questions policymakers have about what they're not. Our role isn't to make decisions that you should saying goodbye to your father dying in a hospital. Shouldn't be to say you can't have a funeral because it's too dangerous. You should. The scientists say here's what the risk. Then you decide what to take. But the role of the scientists should be to say you can't send your kids to school for 2 years. That you can't that you close hospitals so that they can heart attack. That should not. The role of science should address those problems by giving good data and let people take. Science should be an engine for freedom, knowledge and freedom, not something where it stands up to society and says you must this, or else. Shouldn't be pushing mandates for vaccines that have been like the COVID vaccines that were tested for relatively short period. I took the COVID vaccine myself, but I think the mandates that many scientists push have led to the lack of confidence that so many of the public has in science. If science is a force for freedom, for knowledge, it has to. That's
very well. You were demonized, co-author, Great Bearing. Dr. Fauci, total nonsense. Michelle Walensky called it wrong and unsafe. Your opponents who wrote the John Snow memorandum said it could harm 500,000 people. Reading what you wrote, you're undeniably right about all of it. You wrote, quote, current lockdown policies are producing devastating effects on short and long-term public health. Doctor, what does the public health data tell us today in the aftermath of COVID-19 in 2023 and 2024? What does that data tell us?
Senator, first, millions of children were out of school for years. Their rates of suicidality and the roof. Learning loss will have consequences throughout their entire life. There were people who skipped their cancer screening, who have late stage now that should have been picked up earlier. There's the trillions of dollars that cause inflation. So, the UN early in the pandemic estimated almost 100 million people would face starvation if they contemplate economic dislocation caused by the lockdown. This is devastating. Devastating policy that didn't. The Swedish example, for instance, where there's lower death rate, all-cause excess death in Sweden relative to their neighbors, including Norway, including Germany, which locked down more, is an example that we didn't need to do the lockdown. Florida having lower all again is lockdowns did not save lives. Had tremendous consequences on the well-being of the poor, the working class, children, and
I want to read a little bit more. You said in the declaration, quote, keeping students out of school is a grave and now today we see student achievement grades well below the level. You also wrote, quote, young, low-risk adults should work normally rather than from home. Restaurants and other businesses open. Art, music, sports, and other cultural activities should resume, end quote. Now we see communities, cities are safe today and have been dramatically changed because of the lockdowns during COVID. In a nutshell, Doc, what would you have done? What would you do different? What ill advised at NIH, otherwise, how would you have?
Well, I still would have opposed the lockdown. In terms of the NIH director, the kind of thing I would have done, I would allow there to be science debate. There's tremendous uncertainty during debate.
Thank you, Dr. Senator Blunt.
Voted. Thank
thank you, Dr. For meeting with me ahead of time as well as today. I want to echo some of the concerns that my colleagues shared about the risk to the entire NIH research enterprise. One, the concern about the reported 12 individuals who were fired, including scientists. We talked about this, or being able to recruit even and retain this kind of talent. Two, the blanket and illegal 50% cap indirect costs of research institutions. Even in a bipartisan way, there was that in this hearing, the funding and patient freeze cuts in programs for training for future generations of scientists, and the fear that supporting diverse trials will no longer be a priority cause serious and alarm. And to understand that, I think you can look no further than the issue of Alzheimer's disease. As we all know, Alzheimer's is a debilitating and costly disease, affecting nearly 7 million Americans and costing $360 billion in 2024. But this doesn't include the cost of care that's provided by 11 million individuals. And it really doesn't touch the toll that it takes on the individual and their families. I don't think there's anybody who hasn't been impacted by it, whether it's even my mother, my grandmother. Some of the most important work that NIH has been doing is on the disparities in cognitive age. Do you think the administration's executive orders and the nation's aging research project is harmful or helpful to improving our understanding of?
Well, Senator, first say I'm fully committed, as is this administration, I believe, making sure that all the health, no matter what their race, color, sex, if the goal of the NIH, mission of the NIH, so for instance, the representation of minorities in trials is something that I'm fully, there's nothing in the president's executive orders to contradict that. In fact, quite the opposite.
I think the challenge, they're vague, and people are questioning what do they mean, what are the impacts. Even the fact that these programs that can cancel or delayed include the Maximizing Access Research Careers Program, training, support pre and post-doctoral scholars, NIH Intramural Program, the 2025 NIH Summer Internship Program, the Advanced Diversity and Aging Research Program, and then the firing of 10% of staff at Alzheimer's and related dementia. That's what causes concern because we're thinking about the type of those individuals that are going to work in this area. So can you help me to just understand how getting rid of these programs is going to improve our understanding of Alzheimer's prevention and treatment? And what safeguards do you put in place to ensure that changes don't occur by any gender, race, disability, ethnic group, or other vulnerable communities?
Well, Senator, first, as you know, I wasn't involved in decision-making made during the point. If I'm confirmed, I will look at those, to make sure that those programs and other programs that are appropriate will continue. I want to make sure that every single scientist at the NIH that's doing this kind of life-saving, including on all, especially, and also scientists supported NIH-funded research have the resources they need, committed to making sure that NIH funds spent to address their.
Reality is individuals with Down syndrome have staggering 90% of acquiring Alzheimer's in their lifetime. Black and Hispanic individuals are more likely to develop Alzheimer's in a life. Women are twice as likely as men. And so I have some questions that potentially have to commit for the record, but will you commit to ensuring that researchers specifically studying health disparities and working to increase clinical trial diversity will not be targeted or based on their work?
Senator, I commit to making sure that researchers that are addressing health disorder population, basically every American, will have support.
A lot of folks are using code words and selecting out whether it's grant, they're doing targeting, tweet word searches. Will you also commit that you will not do that?
I guess I'm not sure what you mean by targeting code words, but I'll say that I believe very committed my life to address, including minority populations. It's absolutely that NIH continues to do research to address those.
My expired, Chairman. Thank you, and we want to make sure that we work with.
I would look forward to that.
The executive orders don't have that impact that we are already.
Thank you, Senator Rochester. Senator Hawley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Bhattacharya, thank you for being here. I enjoyed it. Let me just start with the subject you and I visited about, and that I also asked your soon-to-be boss about. He was sitting right where you are, and that's the use of abortive. I asked now Secretary Kennedy directly if he would reinstate President Trump's policy to prohibit abortive fetal tissue research in NIH-funded grants. He said that he would. Let me just ask you the same, so we're all on the same page. You support that policy. Will you prohibit the use of abortive fetal tissue in NIH-funded?
I'll absolutely follow the lead of Secretary Kennedy and President Trump on this. Just very quickly, may say why it's so important that we have all, because during the pandemic, I would often be on Catholic radio. People would ask whether the mRNA vaccine made or developed with fetal stem cell lines. Say yes. They had a lot of the folks calling in had ethical objections. In public health, make sure the products of science are ethically acceptable. So having alternatives that are not ethically conflicted to a fetal stem cell line, not just ethically, but it's public health. We need to make sure that everyone willing to take the progress that from application.
Very good. Thank you very much. And I think that it's only an issue of moral principle, although it is important moral principle in the first instance. But it is also a public health issue. We think about millions who are understandably very concerned about the components, if you will, of these palliative vaccines, and we want them to be able to access this. So thank you for making that point. Let me ask you about something else that your soon-to-be boss, Secretary Kennedy, has said recently. That he's talked about his concerns that NIH is working to advance some of this big pharma's bought rather than health people. And he recently wrote in the Wall Street Journal that wants to propose stopping NIH funding going from research with a big pharma company. Can you comment on that? Do you support that? Comment on the importance of sure that what we're doing with our NIH funding is prioritizing health of America, not the profit.
I think that transparency, interest, fundamental trust, absolutely committed to making sure that transparency is the center of the work supported by. I also commit, Senator, to earlier to supporting research on products that are already that don't necessarily have a drug behind it, but have potentially enormous benefit for treating chronic diseases, preventing chronic diseases. I think the NIH ought to be doing research in support of the public, not just parochial research to support, future.
Fantastic. I think that's so important. Restoring sense of credibility and trust that people frankly have lost in much of our public scientific apparatus because of financial conflict, just because of the prevalence of pharma, but also because you and I discussed well what happened during. And I just want to ask you about that remaining moment here. I had the opportunity to question the author, one of the co-authors of the now infamous proxy origin, Dr. Robert Gary, individual who I had the opportunity to question. He wrote that paper on March 17th, 2020. You probably remember, Doctor, this is the paper that infamously stated, and I'm going to quote it, but the SARS-CoV-2 is not a laboratory drug or a manipulated virus. Under question by me, Dr. Gary admitted he actually had no knowledge at the time. He wrote that in March of 2020. He had no evidence to suggest that was the case. This was, in fact, a piece of pure propaganda. He has since had many of his product drawn from peer-reviewed journals because it hasn't followed appropriate peer-reviewed standards. This effort, this propaganda effort, and that paper, as you remember, was used as the basis of government directorship, those in the scientific community like yourself, to millions of ordinary Americans. The net effect of this was a tremendous loss by the American people in the NIH, public health officials. You and I discussed vital importance of restoring some of that credit. Talk to us about how you see going about that.
Senator, that episode is full. Top officials of the NIH abuse their position to hide support for research that may have caused them. I commit to making sure that all of the activities of the NIH, not forward, are transparent, open. That's vitally important for the future of the NIH.
Thank you, Senator Hawley. Senator Alsobrook.
Good morning, Dr. Bott. So you've had great experience at NIH, and so it goes without saying that NIH is a crown jewel, not only in the state of Maryland, which happens to be my state, but it's a crown jewel for our country, where we have many, many talented scientists there. That brings me to a quick line of questions I want to sound the alarm. Very dangerous things are happening to scientists at NIH right now. And I want to ask whether you believe that it is appropriate, and you mentioned a moment ago about the concept of knowledge freedom for science, whether you believe it is appropriate under any to retaliate against scientists, medical research, based on the research they have done. Do you believe it?
No, Senator, I've been subject to that myself. I know what it's like, subject to devastating taken by top officials, the NIH. I will never. I absolutely commit to making sure that free to respect, especially those.
We even said we've spoken out against the culture of conformity and have criticized institutions you allege destroy reputations of scientists do not conform viewpoint. I believe that is what is happening right now at NIH. In fact, your soon-to-be boss, Mr. Kennedy, I questioned him about whether or not to supplement his judgment that of scientists. He said he intended to replace bad scientists with good. Is this your viewpoint? Well,
Senator, I think that science is. I don't know exactly what the nature of that conversation, but I think that the way that you decide what is good in that science by data, by replication, absolutely committed to making sure that those processes are in place.
That you agree we should never been fired a peer scientist because of his peer review.
Senator, I think retaliation, conflict that characterize discussion among scientists, that comes from the top of the scientific institution. Commit to making sure. In fact, one of the 5 things I emphasize that we have allow a culture of dissent, respectful conversation about scientific rooted in data.
I just want to ask you about one other concern. It is no secret. This feels absolutely triggered. Any mention of equality, any mention of inclusion, and the president himself, in his own words, essentially said America tends to erase any reference. Having said that, I'd like to refer to a study that you co-authored called Persistent Racial Disparity in Survival Following Heart Transplantation. Ask whether or not, because I understand there are some watch that have been created, whether you believe that on the basis of this study, should that work be placed on DEI watch as racial?
Senator, I'm not aware of watch. I don't intend to implement this. I will say this, that the health needs of minority population in this country are a vital priority for me. In fact, health of every single American is a vital priority. I want to make sure the research that does rest, and I don't see anything in the press orders that predict that. In fact, quite the contrary. What I've heard from the Secretary and President, let's make America healthy, all Americans.
No, I don't want to be naive. Did mention is absolutely triggered by any mention equality, inclusion, or any reference to race, gender. And so the center that you co-direct, Center for Advancing Socio-Demographic Economic Study of Alzheimer's and Related Dementia, mentions that your mission is to diversify the set of researchers who are working in the field. I want to know whether or not based on that, and that also mentions mentoring diverse scholars. I think that's great, into gender, and to people with different backgrounds. And so whether you believe that this project, which received by the $872 million in tax dollars, $800 million in taxpayer.
No, that's not that. But
That's right. Yeah.
it was less, but yeah.
Well, was this radical and wasteful use of government spending doing this?
Senator, I'm proud of that project.
Yeah.
Senator, first, I'm proud of that project because it's addressed also. And say further that the idea that diverse scientists, I think what that means is scientists with diverse ideas about scientific topics. I think fundamentally what matters is, does a scientist have an idea that advances the scientific field they're in? Do they have an idea that ends up addressing the health of Americans? That's the thing. To me, that diverse set of ideas, the diverse set of ideas, people disagree with each other, is fundamental to science. I think free speech.
That includes racial disparities, right?
Well, racial disparities are important to identify, but more important is to address the health needs of every American, or whether the authorities.
Thank you. That's very good sneaking that last comment in. You know what I'm saying? After the buzz. Senator Huston.
Although one who grew up watching is fun.
That's the real thrill for me whenever I hear that.
This your nomination, frankly, method, been courageous, off, divergent views, back them up, encourage people to think differently about how we solve complex problems. That's what it's be about. I want to talk briefly about something we talked about that we heard a lot of talk about in this century, the number one inflationary cost affecting American business, quality of life, health, and idea that think differently about how we address healthy living, our diet, improve quality of life, drive down costs, improve out, is something I think is sorely missing in the conversation about health. Thinking differently about it is critical to doing it. So just give some thought about your role, help advance that.
So I really enjoyed our conversation at office about exactly this. The chronic takeover. It seems almost intractable. Decades had body weight go up, diabetes rates, chronic disease, and in a way that's the goal of the NIH is to make healthy. That's have the research health. I think I want to make sure that we allow a broad set of ideas to address, because the set of ideas we've had so far actually address continue to get worse. Fundamentally, to me, this is an element of faith, I guess. I believe that if we allow science to have lots of different ideas, that we will be able. But if we say, okay, only a few scientists with their ideas are allowed to support, with the narrowest, like one school of thought, we're not. I don't have the answer how to solve it. If I did, I would have already published. But I want to make sure that science that does out there has support if their ideas predict what the top science.
Well, Kennedy, and I know this goes across agency, Department of Agriculture, Health, Human Services, but it is tremendous cost to
taxpayer, quality of life, competitiveness, all of the sustainability of our federal budget. So just encourage creative thinking and collaboration. I want to mention lots of conversation these days, H grants, talking about containing costs, how we do research, but make sure that we're putting more lead on the target of that research rather than administrative costs. So in Ohio, we have a number of universities, clinics, hospitals, so forth, involved. I really believe many institutions who are willing to work with, sharpening their pencil, getting better, forcing change in how these grants are used, distributed, focused on the research to be done, and just give some thought, if you would, about how we can advance those conversations.
Senator, I think the universities are part, not opponent. I do think that there's a lot of distrust epidemic of distrust. The way to address distrust, applicant working with you and with others to make sure that we can restore that trust by establishing where did the administrative costs go? That's a question. And establishing the right rate, that's going to become confirmed. That's I'll look very carefully. I want to make sure that every single dollar taxpayer and trust goes to address the research that will address the health.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Husted. Now, Senator Mark.
Doctor, I've been hearing about actions taken that are slowing down research, Alzheimer's, stroke, cancer, and mental. One PhD researcher who was working on finding better treatment to prevent suicide said hiring and funding freezes have, quote, stalled their and will stall the development of safe therapies for depression here. Massachusetts doctor, mentor for biomedical researchers, says that Trump's executive orders must go dominion are leading us to face, quote, an enormous brain drain. There is little confidence that these institutions will be able to function normally. This doctor is thinking about leaving the country, which would mean the United States ground fight to lead the world biomedical innovation. A cancer researcher at the University of Massachusetts said the Trump administration cut NIH will, quote, send progress in curing human brain. A professor of medicine and science working on improving care for Americans with dementia had their grant due meeting with NIH abruptly canceled without any plans scheduled because this funding freezes. Will delay research by several months at least, and inconsistent funding will mean layoffs, services that improve care and nursing. And just this week, I received copies of letters sent to researchers who received funding from the NIH to study Alzheimer's and improving support for caregivers and study how to improve mental health care in primary care. The letters terminated funding for these, stating, quote, the premise of the grant is incompatible with NIH priorities because the study explicitly included LGBTQ people. And without this fund, grant recipients now be forced to stop to address the mental health crisis, Alzheimer's. People have committed their lives. Will lose their job. By unanimous consent, I submit these letters for the Chairman.
Without objection.
Doctor, in your testimony, you stated that you want to encourage free dissent among scientists. Spirit of speech and dissent, will you commit here today to object to any decision made by Donald Trump that would slow or stop life?
Senator, I not decisions NIH up to now. if I'm confirmed, my commitment is to make sure that all the scientists at the NIH, all the scientists funding have the resources they need to do their life-saving
Will you
research.
object if it flow stops?
My interactions with the, Secretary Kennedy and President Trump, they suggest that they don't want to slow research. They want to speed it up.
So will you object if that becomes evident? There's slowing.
But I have to say, I don't believe that they are do that. They're committed
Will
to
you commit?
innovation.
Will you commit here today to reinstating funding for scientists whose funding has been terminated because their research does not align with MAGA ideology?
Senator, I don't believe that ideology ought to determine whether one gets. I believe very fundamentally in wide
funding
research.
mental health conditions of the LGBTQ community, that should not be a basis for canceling funding for research. Is that what you're saying?
Senator, I'm not. I'd have to look. If I'm confirmed, I'll absolutely will go look the letters of records. Go look, but if confirmed, I'll go look carefully into that. I want to make sure that the processes that the NIH has to identify
on its face is absurd. They have mental health issues. So will you commit here today to do everything in your power to stand up for the American life-saving research, the fate of the Trump on scientific freedom?
Senator, I think I absolutely commit to supporting the research that don't agree with the Senator that the President Trump is opposed to. In fact, quite the opposite. He is quite in favor of health. Fundamentally, the research that we do.
I'm being told by the researchers that they can't even hire their new because a brilliant career because they won't fund. So it's just the opposite. Trump freezing, scaring, frightening whole next scientists who believe the funding won't be there. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a follow up and then a closing statement. Again, thank you for being here. You said something I'm trying to square. First, with patients, and you have spoken about proving that, particularly for younger investigators. By the way, I think your face have a look. So thank you for thinking creative. And you've also correctly said we need to be putting more money into cutting edge research, which may fail. It's cutting edge, but what's the alternative? But I don't. So what I'm square with that is the dollars for validation. With all the kind of caveats you put, you'd have to have the full cooperation of the person whose study's being validated, and you'd have to have the same circumstances and the same genetic makeup, same this and that, this. So it seems like the validation push would put more pressure on both the cutting edge research priority and the young investigators finding it easier to get. Knowing that you've thought about it.
I think of that validation work as central to doing good. Like any portfolio that doesn't that kind of validation built to it is not live. Do cutting edge research, not valid.
So what is the difference between doing the validation research and kind of what you have criticized that we sometimes do the same thing over and over?
Well, the difference is that validation for particular results. I published a study. Get the same. Incremental science is you propose a study that is like epsilon away from what already.
Now, inherently, if epsilon away fails, it falls into question the original premise.
But it's much easier to be certain that about research that's epsilon away from here to work versus like big ideas, different directions might be big. Any research portfolio has to have lots of different approaches. I think the key to me is making sure that early career researchers, research ideas about those get support. that are in the portfolio. Some of those fail, some of those succeed. Ones that succeed take a big advantage. I don't think that the validation is just a check. Is the research that I did, is you all find this? That tends not to be important. I think that's a mistake. Scientists ought to support that. They ought to support that. That way, the entire research portfolio as a whole is because you know that valid.
I don't object to the validation research. It does seem it's going to be attention. I'll look forward to you.
Senator, I look forward to working.
That'll be great. Let me just conclude. The issue of autism is just one of those things we all think about. I want to note that last year Congress reauthorized the Autism Cares Act, and Senator Collins and the Health Committee were those that did that. And the law coordinates the federal autism research and is implemented by NIH. And so I look forward to working. But one thing that continues to concern me, because I've listened, there's an opportunity. If we continue to plow the barren ground of something which has already been validated multiple, that there is not a connection between vaccination and autism. We don't have the money to go after the real thing. And you said something which just bing, 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 I just thought was so good, that you have faith that a well-done research that provides answers will be convincing. Well, we've already had that for the patient. What we need is the well-done research finding the true reason for autism. And that's what the hope is for the people with autism. And if we're pissing away money over here, that's that less money that we have to go after the reason. You're an as well as an MD. You know that. So I look forward to, the opportunity cost of wasting money on one more thing that's been proven exhaustive, denying the opportunity to find the real reason would be a thief for everyone who deals with it, which is.
Senator, I share that passion you have for finding the real the cause, but that's where the vast ought to go. We want answers. Parents want answers. Kids are suffering, and the NIH ought to doing the research. That's the most important.
Yes. Well, thank you again for being here. I admire your sons for being so well behaved. I'm sure the presence of their mother right has some influence over that. This concludes our hearing. For any senators who wish to ask additional questions for the record will be due tomorrow at 5 p.m.